Well, I want to start out just with a few brief comments about our school system. And I think that you recognize that education is a priority in this community, and high performance is really an expectation. And I know that you trust our school system to deliver on those expectations. And when we do, the result is, and it should be, higher expectations. And that's what continues to happen in a high-performing system. And we embrace that and love that, and that's really the essence of our conversation tonight, because our community has invested intentionally in a good school system. You are here most likely because you're either a legacy or you moved here because of the school system. It's been described as the gem of the city. It's an economic driver for many people. It's home value. Value increases, but really it's all about how we are able to deliver the edge our kids need, because 52 years ago, we had community pioneers who said, we want something different for our school system. We want to build an excellent school system, and we have done that. We have what I believe to be a legacy of excellence in this school system, and it really has much to do with an intentional effort of a community that has unparalleled support in getting us to that place. And so one of the things that I think is important is that we embrace that legacy of excellence, and we look at the things that we've done. And here are just a few of the many accolades that I could talk about that are really perennial accomplishments of our school system. I'll give you a moment to take a look at those. But just a few points to note to you. Several of these are record-setting type things. $44 million in scholarship offerings last year. 21 National Merit semifinalists is the highest we've had in 16 years. The AP qualifying scores are the highest we have had in the last 5 years, and that's really impressive coming out of the situation we went through the last couple of years. 74% of our graduates were offered scholarships. 79% who start college from our school graduate, and that is almost double what you see in the national average. Those are tremendous accomplishments. And I like to say that education is about so much more than just academics. When you consider that our students raise over $500,000 just to give and to provide for other people who have needs is impressive in its own right. And then really, we rank number 2 when you just consider academic achievements on ACT, on our state assessments. All of those indicators say to us we are right at the very top. To me, that's a standard, that is a legacy of excellence that we have much to be proud of and build upon. What I want to do is to share with you a couple of ways that I think our school system has made this a priority, has made being a system with a legacy of excellence really important. The first one is the investment we make in our faculty. And I think this is a really important point to make, because this is unparalleled community support. We have about 550 teachers, a little bit shy of that, in our school system. And the state provides for a portion of those, but our system, because of the support we have and the local tax base we have, provides 110 additional teachers. That's 20%. That is a remarkable commitment of a community. But what that means to us are all of these things, and I see it especially with my little ones. You see it with yours as well. We're able to offer 5 world languages at our high school, 3 at our middle school. We're able to offer art and music to all of our kindergarten through 5th graders, and then a large amount of offerings as they get into middle school and high school. We're able to provide a lot of academic electives, which include advanced courses, even in middle school all the way through high school, career-based courses. We have a wide range of arts courses I've mentioned to you already. And then we dive deeper. We go into the places where academic support is needed. And these are things we're all able to do, not because the state provides us certain dollars, but because we do it and we make it a commitment. Most of our the most important investment we make, as you'll see in a few minutes, is in the people that we're called to lead our children. And I'm really thankful for that, because my 2 boys, like yours, can go to any corner of their classrooms, any corner of their buildings, their cafeterias, and they're surrounded by people who love them, who care for them, who are expert in their fields, who challenge them. That's what we want. This is where our major investment is. We've also, over the last decade, invested in facilities. Between 2011 and 2016, our system grew from about 6,100 kids to about 7,100 kids. That's a dramatic increase in 5 years. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that, but I think the attractiveness of living in Vestavia and being able to come to the schools is a major piece of it. But during that time, we began to see that we had capacity needs throughout our schools. So the board invested $110 million, borrowed about 2/3 of that in order to finance additional sites that we needed in the way of classrooms that you can see up here, new and renovated libraries, multi-purpose gymnasiums, improved cafeterias, 2 new campuses that we purchased from Jefferson County and Hoover. And what we did was we finished these projects and have 75% of our space filled. That means we've got a lot of room to grow, and that's exactly what the board set out to do. That was a wise investment. What we have at Lewis Bazitz today, the freshman campus that allowed us to move 500 plus students off this campus, the purchase of Dolly Ridge, which has allowed us to abandon the central campus, the additions of classrooms at Caba Heights and Liberty Park, all to address the growing needs we had. So because of those 2 investments, I think this is a good example in this 10-year period of time, I think, speaks to a lot of what value is. If you don't have kids in the system, if you're had kids in the system, if you've got them in now, then this speaks, I think, to a really important piece, and that is just taking a look at the middle school zones, the average sale price of homes the last 10 years. That's pretty dramatic as far as I can tell, 60-50%. That is a large move up in what houses are valued at, and that is a tremendous, I think is a tremendous accomplishment of a community that sticks to its priorities, and education being one of those. Well, obviously, when you have average house prices going up like that, that means we're all paying more taxes. And we've all been doing that more in the last couple of years. We're going to be doing that, and we recognize again this year because our values keep going up. And I think that's a very legitimate point that I want to build on just a little bit with you. This busy worksheet is a story about people, because what you see in the red and blue lines are revenues versus expenditures. In our school system over the last 8 years, we have increased from our budget being $69 million to $90.5 million this year. And our expenditures are almost at that same level. There is one hiccup in this slide, and it's this blip here where we spent a lot of money that we had been able to save over the years in order to finance some of the additional construction work that we did. But by and large, we are walking right along a fine line, and this year we anticipate about a 1% additional amount over expenditures, which is really small if you think about your own home budget and giving yourself 1% room for the unknowns. We're operating pretty tight at this point. That began to happen during this 8-year period of time. Once we took care of the issues with student capacity, we started to see a tightening of the belt, and that's what you see here. The important point to make for you is that those green bars indicate what we spend in people. So our investment in people, I'll come back to that, 80% of our budget is about people. And that's what it should be. The remaining part is about operations, but that's where the value is for our school system. And what we've done over the last 8 years is we have provided 5 salary increases for all of our employees. And the state does a salary increase, and we follow suit with that, but because we typically pay higher than the state in past years, we subsidize what the state gives us for all of our teachers. And for the 110 teachers that are solely ours, we pay for all of their salaries plus raises. So the point I want to make to you is that those upper lines are moving, the green line is moving them. That's how we're spending those extra tax dollars that we're getting from those valuations in property. That's an important slide to see. So we continue to invest, and where we have invested more and more has been more of the specific individualized needs that students have, whether it's academic or behavioral. Those things, they get more and more specialized and differentiated, and that's where we have put our dollars. The other thing to note is over the past 6 years, what expenditures look like in our system when you compare them to others. So we get funding from our state, we get a little bit from the federal government, and we get most of our money from local tax dollars, and that's a good thing. What you see is a picture here of what we spend per student from local dollars. Now in total, just so you know, Vestavia Hills City Schools in FY21 spent $12,770 per student. The local portion of that may be a little difficult for you to see, was $4,781. This year, FY21, this is our most recent data, $5,444 locally spent per student. That ranks 5th in the state, and that's behind Mountain Brook and Homewood and 2 charter schools that formed after 2016. So 2 years ago, we assembled a group of stakeholders that included business leaders, finance experts from the community, parents, staff members, to ask them to look at our books, because I've just outlined for you that we have a tight budget, and here's why. But it's always good to let somebody else look at that, because it's really more difficult for me to convince a constituency that we are tight in our budget if somebody else doesn't validate that. So we said, you take the books, look at it. So we had a lot of members from our chamber, as I said, business leaders, financial experts, parents, staff, to ask ourselves 3 questions. Are there places that we're doing too much in that we could cut back on? Are there efficiencies in places that we need to look at? Are there new opportunities? And generally speaking, what the committee said is there's not a place where we think we can cut staff. There's actually places where we need to grow staff. And I'll outline some of those in a few minutes. And they said there are some operational efficiencies you can improve upon. And I'll talk about some of those tonight as well. And then the last thing is there are new academic opportunities we want our students to have. And they really validated what several other stakeholder groups had said over the last 3 years, that we want to look at our future without limits in mind. We think there are other places that we can go. And really what that did was summarize this problem. We are limited in how we can continue to provide the excellence our community has come to know in Vestavia Hills City Schools. That's an identified problem. We think our solution is a strategic investment that protects our community's legacy as well as our student and school experiences. And we think that because investing today protects our legacy and elevates the value of our schools, businesses, and community. And with that in mind, we brought in July to the Board of Education our vision of 1Rebel, 1Future. And this simply is just a message that as a unified school system, that what we want to do is we want to look to the future with this mindset and this identity that we have, that we're always cutting edge, that are always doing something different, always looking to make things better. It's a unified concept that includes all of our schools and all of the things that we think are necessary to move ourselves forward. 1Rebel, 1Future has 2 priorities, and I want to speak to those each, and then we'll start looking at some pictures that maybe you've been coming wanting to see. The first is profound learning opportunities for students, and the second is vibrant facilities for profound learning. So I'd like to talk about the first one, profound learning opportunities for students. I think it's important to note that there is a real difference in engagement and involvement. And so if you think about it this way, if you're in the bleachers for a game on Friday night, and some of you were, I saw a lot of engaged fans. If you're in the bleachers in some of the games we saw Saturday night, you might have seen some involved fans that weren't quite as motivated. If you go to a worship service, you may see some engaged. You may see some simply sitting in the pews. If you go to a show choir concert, there may be screaming and hollering and yelling, and there may be just some sitting. There is a real difference. And engagement happens when there's a connection. There's this passion that kids get, that they begin to really realize that there's some connection being made to what I'm doing and to the real world, to the relevant things that they're thinking about, to the choices they want to make in the future. We're thinking a lot about how to best engage them, connect them to what we know is important for them as they move outside and graduate from our high school. So there's some ideas that we have behind that, but I can say it kind of differently when I think about what our students are saying, and they're talking to us. Our students are talking to us in 2 different ways. They're talking to us by telling us what they're choosing to do, and they're talking to us by showing us how they are producing results. And then the last thing, our future is talking to us and saying what we need to do for our students. So take a look at some of these choices our students are making. 1 in 4 of our students in middle and high school are choosing to be involved in athletics. 2 in 3 of our students are choosing to be a part of a fine arts program. 91% of graduates in this past class took a world language. And many of them took more than one world language. Some of them even got 100 plus got a seal of biliteracy, which meant they were actually fluent in a language. I was speaking with a class a couple of weeks ago at the high school, the leadership class, and they unanimously all had a world language. And most of them had 2, 3, and some even 4 because they were planning to do something with that. But moreover, they thought it was just important to do a world language for reasons that I'll outline for you in a few minutes. The middle one I think is interesting. The class of 2021, students who attend Alabama, Auburn, UAB, Alabama institutions. And that's a majority of our students. Oliver, I don't know what the percentage is. You might could help me with that. Percentage of overall graduates that typically attend an in-state school. So most of ours do that. So this is good data for us. 45% of them chose a STEM-related major. So that's science, technology, engineering, mathematics. So any of those fields that apply to those broadly, 45% did. If you go back and look at the 6-year graduation rate of our students, and I mentioned that earlier, that's 79%. Can you believe you get 6 years to graduate in college, but you have to do it in 4 in high school? With the 6-year graduation rate of those 79%, the most recent 6-year cohort we have is 2015. 25% of those that graduated with a college degree graduated in a STEM-related field. So what I see is a trend. While freshmen may change their majors, they're moving towards STEM. This is an idea to them. They're telling us things. They're telling us this is important. And by the way, the 2 most common majors that are selected by our graduates are engineering and medical science. No surprise there. And if you're further interested in the least regretted majors, there's a study I can show you which says engineering is the least regretted major of all the ones that got a part of this survey. All that to say, they're telling us something by the things that they're participating in, and that's informative. Our students are also telling us something in how they're performing. So while we have 86% of our students qualifying for an AP score, 14% do not. While we have 85% of our students in this past class plan to go to college, 15% do not because they choose a gap year or military or they start into the workforce. 79% we have a college completion rate, thank you, of that, which means 21% of those did not finish in 6 years. And we're number 2 in ACT and ACAP scores. All of those really good, but they're telling us something. So when the Blue Angels fly this formation, and you've all seen this diamond formation that they fly, I heard one speak a couple of years ago, and he says, we start this diamond formation at 36 inches wing to wing apart, which I thought, well, at 500 miles an hour, that's pretty good. After a year, he says, our goal is to be 18 inches apart. Now, I'm thinking to myself, that's a great application for Vestavia Hills City Schools because we are an excellent school system. But there is a place to grow, and our students are telling us that. Our data is saying that. It's saying that literacy is a place we can strengthen our skills, and it's saying particularly math and science is a place we can strengthen our skills. And what would happen to all of those numbers if we did that? So they're talking to us and how they're performing. And finally, the future is telling us something. STEM is the emerging field, already is emerging. It will dominate the landscape in terms of jobs. And now, while not every student ought to go into STEM or will choose STEM, it's the skills that come from this that are important. It's the unique skills, such as problem solving, analytical skills, logic, data analysis, detail orientation, all of the things that STEM does really well for us in the way our brains think. That's important. But also, there's an important to the things our students are telling about what they choose to do. The humanities are equally important. Languages help us. A second language helps the first language because we understand word and sentence structure better in our first language when we have to learn a second language. We have 50 languages at least spoken in our school system. There's rich diversity in our schools. All of this goes to cause that we want a balanced, comprehensive curriculum for our students that says humanities are important, equally valued as STEM. And so what we want to do is strengthen the core of those at our earliest ages, because remember, we're working to engage, connect them, and really get them into the things that they're telling us they want to do. So what we'd like to do is we'd like to go back to our kindergarten and 5. We have said for many years that art and music are important, and we offer those and have for years in our elementary grades, and I'm so thankful for that because I think that's important. At one time, this year's graduating class was the last class to experience a foreign language in elementary school. That's been a long time ago. So we have said at times that's important to us. What we're saying now is we'd like to say that in addition to an elective, so to speak, or a special in elementary grades, a student would go to art one day, music one day, library one day, they would go to a STEM class one day, and then they go to a world language class. And so every child in our system, K-5, would experience in the course of a week a full array of what the humanities and STEM mean, and we start getting them ready to launch as they go into middle and high school. And we particularly like to expand the offerings that we have at high school to more specifically go toward the things our kids are telling us, engineering and medical science. So we want to expand what we do at the high school to complement that work. And finally, we want to make sure our teachers and students have the support they need, both the academic support and the support they need just for the life skills of the challenges that they have before them. We think this is important. We have doubled down on character development and what we want to do for our kids. And we think that the things we teach with character, such as resilience, teamwork, perseverance, grit, all of the things that are necessary to be successful, you can find those in the humanities, in the arts, in athletics, in STEM. We want all those things to be important and embedded in what we do every day. And we have a core of counselors that do that really well, but our job really is to walk alongside you. It is to partner with parents and to collaborate with parents about the values you think and the character thing you think are important for our students. It's not to invent them. It's to walk alongside you. And we need to bolster that support because the needs for our students are only growing stronger and stronger and stronger and more differentiated. The second focus area is vibrant facilities for learning. The best way I can describe this to you is that every space that a child sits in, every space a child occupies in our building is a lab. It's a classroom. It's a place where they learn. We don't offer anything on our campuses that we don't think learning can come from. So everything we do, we think is important. And so we want a facility and a space where kids can most optimally learn and do the things we want them to do to engage in the process. And we do it through 4 lenses. So the idea with vibrant facilities is we look at safety, we look at health, we look at accessibility, and we look at comparability. Over that decade of growth, we grew 23% in our facilities. That's a lot of square footage. There's a lot of campus space, a lot of acreage. There's a lot of lights. There's 2,200 parking spaces. There are 600 classrooms. There's a lot of space that we're taking care of. And when we grew that amount, we really didn't add support to take care of it. So we have one custodian for every 24,000 square feet, and that's a big house. And we've got one maintenance technician that's responsible for every 15,000 square feet. So we need to bolster how we take care of what we have. This is a major investment in our community that we have, and we need to take care of it. One of the areas that we most especially need to focus in on is upgrades to heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. I wanted to show you this chart. What you're seeing on the the vertical axis, is the number of mechanical units, heating, ventilation, air conditioning. And this equals the number in each year and the age of our units. So in this graph, 30 units we have, and those happen to be at East, are almost 30 years of age. And you can see some of them in this area for Cobb Heights West, Liberty Park, so forth. About half of our units are at their end of their useful life, getting really close to it, and all they're going to do is keep getting older. The maintenance is expensive. The cost to purchase new equipment continues to grow, as we all know. But this tells us something, because if healthy indoor air is important, and it is, and I would posit to you, agree or disagree, we felt like that was the single most important thing we could do the last 2 years, is make sure the indoor air is healthy. And we think that's still really important. Always has been important, just hasn't been in the spotlight. But we want to make sure heating and ventilation and air is working. We want our kids to be comfortable. This is a major focus area. The other thing is we just need to update aging facilities. And our principals are detailing some priorities of things they want to do in their buildings that need updating, be it bathrooms or whatever the case may be. If you think about this, our buildings range in age from 18 to 65 years old. The median is 49 years. So we're in need of improvements. Some of them, like this building you're sitting in and some of the surrounding areas, really haven't been touched in that 49-year span of time. So there are some outdated conditions that we want to tend to. And the other thing, of course, is the comparability of facilities. So this, to me, is an interesting way to look at this. When I talk about comparability of facilities, I don't really mean equality or equity, because there is no campus that's just alike. East is unique to West. West is unique to Dolly Ridge, to Cobb Heights, to Liberty Park, to Visits, to Liberty Park. I mean, they're all unique and different. We can't make them exactly alike, but there are some core places that they need to be comparable. And this is a good illustration. East and West are our two oldest campuses in our system. They are our two largest campuses in terms of population, and they have the two smallest multi-purpose gymnasiums. And if you played recreational sports, or you've been to events, and some of you have kids, you understand this. They're small spaces, and they're operating with a lot of kids every day running through those spaces. Well, the comparability is obvious. We don't have comparability, and we don't have multi-purpose classrooms in those buildings either. Cobb Heights, Liberty Park, and Dolly Ridge all in the last few years have added these multi-purpose classrooms which can function as large meeting spaces for student, parent gatherings, meetings, etc. And so we'd like to provide those at those schools. And then Dolly Ridge has a really small kitchen and serving area. That's phenomenal to me. They can prepare the number of meals they do each day. But those of you who were in Central, who maybe went to school there or had kids there at one point, can appreciate this, because it's like walking into the Central cafeteria. Really small. So here's some ideas of what we would do. What you're seeing is East Campus. And this is the front of East, and the pickup area is right here. This is the new cafeteria. And what we would do is take the old cafeteria here, and we would add some additional space for a multi-purpose classroom and additional classrooms in the existing cafeteria. We need to add some additional office space for counseling and other support programs. And we'd like to take a look at the gym and how it and the stage area is being used to make for a larger space. This is Dolly Ridge, and this is kind of a complicated thing to see, but I did this on purpose. This is the campus facility, and this is the new addition to the campus. Right in the middle here is where our cafeteria kitchen is, and it's just showing you a picture of the small space that we have. So we would be addressing that on this campus. But I wanted to show this slide just because of the condition on this field. This is a beautiful field that we conditioned. It's got great drainage, irrigation, it's lit, all the things that we wanted to do in thinking about its use. And it also has a baseball field, because Dolly Ridge was a junior high school. Some of you may have gone there back in the day, but it's a junior high school, so it's a great facility in terms of its size. So we have a ball field here that's a very large one, but it's hard to get to. So if you're playing soccer and you have to go there, you've got the long walk to make, and it can be a little bit tough going on that gravel that's about as round as your fist, all those kind of things. So what we'd like to do is we'd like to put some more permanent surface here and asphalt this down and create parking at the lower area for those who need some assistance getting to the field, some accessibility parking. And we'd like to take a sidewalk from the upper parking lot and bring it down by the new building into this area. This campus is the one that we really are concentrating some accessibility things on, but that's what we would do at Dolly Ridge. This is West, and here is Highway 31. Here is the central office. This is the Chamber of Commerce office right now, about to not be. This is about to belong all to the city school system, the recreational gym that's here, and then here's West, and here's the pickup area. So West has an existing gym that sits right here. What we would do with this project is we would take that gym and put it and turn it into a 2-story classroom, because we have some classroom needs there like we do at East, and those two campuses tend to fluctuate up and down a little bit more than others with student population. But there are also some specials needs with art, music, The STEM program, we would add as examples the multi-purpose area. And what we would do is we would enclose an area that would connect the existing campus here to the chamber rec facility, because that would become their gym, which is a much larger size gym. That part of the project would belong to West. This part would be a central office annex just for additional meeting space. It's great community meeting space to support the needs that many of our community organizations have. And then we'd like to do some improvements to the exterior of that facility. And I mean no disrespect to you if you like the color of the brick, but it really is outdated. It needs to be more becoming, I think, of what the standard of excellence is in our school system. And so we could do some work there, I think, and make it look more appealing, and it would be a really nice impact going down 31 to see library, Walled Park, the new school facility, City Hall, etc. I think that would be a really good showcase. And it's the school that the most people that come through Vestavia will see is West. They don't see the others near as much as they see that one. Secondary campuses. This is Pizzett's, Liberty Park Middle School, freshman campus, and high school. This is just a comparison that shows you a couple of things. The first one is our band and choir space. You're welcome to walk across here. Faith would probably let you in if you wanted to see it to really appreciate it. But our largest populations of students and our largest programs by a long shot are at the high school. And so our smallest spaces are also at our high school. And we'd like to address that. You can just see the stark difference in the square footage of these rooms. And then on this side with multi-purpose gyms, Liberty Park has one, Pizzett's has two. And even though Liberty Park has fewer students, they have the same number of programs that are in need of facilities and space. So we'd like to make that more comparable. And we'd like to do something at the high school as well, because whereas the middle schools have about 26 competitive athletic programs, there are 53 varsity programs on this campus. There's a lot of students involved. There's about 1,400 or so students that participate in athletics. I said about 25% of that secondary population, and 2/3 of those are camped out on the high school freshman campuses. So we'd like to expand the multi-purpose gyms to create an indoor space there. And also, this is an outdated kitchen, and it's in big need of repair and really redoing, starting over. So here's just a look at what that would look like. At Liberty Park, and this is the Parkway. If you're going this way, you're going to Sickert Hollow. The elementary school sits up here. And if you're turning off of the Parkway, going this way, you're going to the baseball fields and soccer fields back here. So there is a pad behind Liberty Park that sits here where we would put the new multi-purpose gymnasium to complement the one we have here. And just so you know there's a dotted section of line here, which is not part of this idea now, but for future growth, we would be able to put additional classrooms on that campus. And this is an idea of what the outside would look like and what the inside, there you go, would look like. What this would give is both middle schools with comparable gyms for their facilities. And Liberty Park Middle School is going to grow. It's going to continue to increase in its numbers. This is Lewis Pizzett's Middle School, and it's a relatively very new campus, renovated campus. But what we knew very early on is we had a shortage of space in just locker rooms because of the number of kids participating. So what we'd like to do at the bottom of the campus where our new gym is go out here with an extension that would add some additional locker room space for our female and male athletes. The high school is the place where a lot of action is happening. And when I talk about comparability, that's the new spaces, as you can see. When I've talked about this is where we're talking about adding new spaces. So to best orient you, you're sitting, somewhere about right here. But when you're coming in, all of this is the athletic complex, if you think about it, at the high school. But think about this particular area, outside parking, right outside here. So focus in on this area, the area behind the new gym, which is a grass area now, and the tennis courts up here. So what we'd like to do is to create the idea that when you come onto campus, you've got an academic wing, which is the large part of the campus, and you have an arts and athletics, the companion pieces to academics, entrances coming in right here. So we'll be putting in a band room, a pavilion area, and an indoor facility here for multi-use. So let me show you just what that looks like. This band space, of course, would be much more comparable in size than what it needs to be for the campus. The existing band room that sits right outside here would become the choir room. The choir room would become the theater room. We would move over in this area, redo the cafeteria kitchen area, and expand the kitchen, and then the new plaza area. So if you were walking into this pavilion, this is the new gym. You'd be walking into this entrance. And what we're just showing you is a takeoff on what a common space could look like on our campus for our students, for classrooms, for seating, for lunches, for Friday night events, whatever kind of festivities people might want to have. And to really appreciate the need of this, when our band is getting ready to perform on Friday night, to see the 250 try to be in this facility gives you an appreciation of what we're talking about. Above this band room would be a dance studio, and that's another place Faith could show you tonight if you wanted to see it, because in the studio she worked in for a lot of years before in her current position. There are pilasters, there are poles in the dance room. That's really a difficult proposition for our dancers to do, and really they're award-winning, so I'm thinking, what could they do, with a really good space. Behind the new gym, the idea is an indoor facility that's a multi-use facility. And we think this is important that it be enclosed, because you can take a concept such as UABs where there is a pavilion, but what you don't eliminate are the elements, the factors of weather. So lightning is a factor, cold is a factor, and when many of your athletic events are occurring in the wintertime, all of the sports could use this facility, but they don't have much more usability if it's not an enclosed space. So we control the elements and we keep them in a controlled space. I spent about 15 minutes this summer watching our band at the baseball field in July. And if that didn't convince me we needed to help there as well, it convinced me pretty quickly. It's really hot. And so what could a conditioned space do for the band program during the summer to be able to carry out the things that they need to do for practicing? Okay, so another orientation of the high school campus. Here's the band room area I just said. And then here's the tennis courts, because there's a ripple effect, obviously, that takes place here. If we take these parking spaces out, and there's about 100 of those or so, what we would do is we would remove the tennis courts and put parking there. And one of the things we could consider is if you happen to have students who park on the upper pavilion across Lime Rock, this tiered area, the board owns property further down the line that we could develop additional parking. If we wanted to do that, we could net as many as 270 more spaces. That would help to make sure all the juniors and seniors can park, all of our staff can park. And what I think we need more than anything is parking for visitors. It is really chaotic at times, not a safe condition in the front here. We would want to do that. The ripple effect, of course, is what do you do with the tennis courts? And so behind Central is the recreational facility for soccer, been used for many years. It's a low-lying area. We think a more pervious surface area would be appropriate for this space. So inside the Chantel Dixon-Jones track, we would keep that in place, and we would put 7 tennis courts. And we have 6 currently now, so we'd be able to add tennis courts for our tennis team. This beautiful yellow box is the idea of a bathroom facility, which would be nice to have, of course. We could do some additional things on this campus, such as the area where the playground is and the basketball courts are. We could do something in the way of pickleball, something that may be supportive of community efforts we think would be important. So the community would still have a park here that has tennis, possibly pickleball, a track, and we'd also improve the parking, which is short of a nightmare situation, that we'd like to improve the safety of how that works and how it flows and create more spots. That's how we would use that. And of course, that has the ripple effect of what happens to soccer. And soccer has already moved a lot of their programming to Dolly Ridge, to a larger facility. And so that's the ripple effect of what would happen in the facilities part. So what does this look like in terms of dollars? And I haven't given the board budget, and I'm not going to give one tonight. But we're close. In December, I'm going to talk to the board about the budget and what all this means in terms of our needs financially. But what you can see is generally what the breakdown looks like. This is important to note because 45% of what we want to do is to take care of the facilities and space needs we have now on our campuses. That's half of the project almost. 25% would go toward people and programs, STEM, languages, the support we need in counseling and academic support. 20% would be the arts and athletics additions that I mentioned at the high school. It's a fifth of the project. And then 10% for the general operations and maintenance to maintain what we have. So when I think about the community that has a legacy of excellence, there's been a legacy of investment to do it. And we have had 3 times in our history that we have voted a property tax locally specifically for the school system. We did it in 1970 when the school system was formed so we could build this building that we're sitting in today. And in some cases has been this way since 1972 or 3 when we finished. We did it in 1976. Kim, we did this so we could build West. And that supported West, of course, an additional growth that we have. And then in 1990, we added an additional 10.5 mil tax that supported what eventually became an annexation in Liberty Park a couple of years later. And we've had that tax, and that's the last one we've had. So 32 years ago was our last tax, and it passed by 32 votes. It was a close election. Since then, things have changed. Our population has doubled, both here and it's doubled in our schools. I think we had about 3,800 students in 1990. We have just shy of 7,000 today. We didn't have SROs. We didn't have nurses. We didn't have technology. We did not have many of the academic needs that we have. There has been obvious changes over a 30-year period of time. And when I reference that growth we saw a decade ago, we reached the point where we are today, where we're talking about wanting to move our system forward, but having a need. And so I can sum it up with this. We're limited in how we continue to provide the excellence in our community. A strategic investment protects our community's legacy, as well as our student school experiences, and investing today protects our legacy and elevates the value of our school, our business, and our community. Good question. One of the things that our financial team, when they were asking us to look at possibilities and efficiencies, that's one of the things we've identified as a place we can do something about. Central does not really have value to our system, the building itself, any longer. And so the board has authorized the look at how we can market that and sell it. And so we're in the process of doing it now and determining what we can do and the best value we can get for it. So what we'd like to do is liquidate it, to answer your question, and keep the space behind it that I just mentioned. Yeah. That's a good question. So December is the date, the December board meetings when I'll ask the board to consider beginning the official process, which means we'll say, here's the budget, here's what it's going to take to do it in terms of a tax increase, here's the timeline. So I can be more specific at that time to answer your question, but generally speaking, we want to have a tax election if all things go the way they need to go, and there's some legal things that have to take place all the way through the spring, but assuming that happens, we would want to have a vote before the end of the school year. Because what that allows us to do is to begin the collection of ad valorem October of 23. If we wait past May 31 next year, it would be October of 24 before we would collect taxes. So there's a timing issue we're thinking about, which would allow us to start quickly. And the first thing we would want to do is to go toward the programs, the most important thing. So we would like to begin implementing as quickly as we can the academic program pieces, STEM, languages, the support network we're talking about. Now that's the principals have some things they have to think about getting there in terms of staffing it and where do you put them, etc., knowing that there's construction coming, but we believe this is an important thing to do first. So the next thing that would likely come is we would likely start with East and West and Dolly Ridge and begin some work on those, the new spaces. Work on those because we can do that without interrupting the school time. And while that's going on, we probably will start Central because we have to have tennis courts before we take the tennis courts away. and we need parking before we take parking away. So there's a rotation of things that has to happen before we would get to the second big round of new work, which would be the middle and high school work. Sandwiched inside of that would be a lot of things related to lighting. This is a really great illustration in here of problems with lighting because you can't see the screen well. This is a problem, but we do have in our high school here new LED lighting, and we would put that in all of our schools, all the upgrades with mechanical I mentioned, roofing, etc., building insulation, all that would be interspersed in it. And so what I'd like to think is a 3 to 4 year time period to get that work, all the work done. Yeah, we can do it soon. Now, I would tell you that as a part of adding 2 specials, they've got to have 2 places to do it or some idea of how that's going to be done. So it would be disingenuous to say that all the exact pieces of a STEM classroom would be ready to go, but we're running a STEM classroom at Liberty Park now. And Dr. Ed Abbott could talk to you about what that looks like. It doesn't have a full array of necessarily the technologies, but they're doing STEM things. And so we can put programming in place and build toward the optimal type classroom. Some campuses have to be a little more creative than others.
We would find a way.
Yeah.
We would find a way if we got the perfect way.
Yeah. See, the value add for us is it's great for our students. It's really great for our teachers as well because elementary teachers, and bless them all, they have a job to do and don't have a lot of time in between to get it done. And so what we do is we give them some extra time to collaborate and plan when they have those 2 extra days of specials. So it's all that to say our faculties are very much behind it and we do what we have to do to make it work. It'd be a good thing for our kids. Good question. The census data can best give you this answer. Typically in a school system, typically in a community, about 70 to 75% do not have kids in the school system. And that's startling to think about, but that's typically what you see the case. So as in any election, the same one that there'll be tomorrow night, the key to a successful election is get the supporters to go vote. And so we want to get the supporters to go vote, and the ones who don't support, then maybe they don't vote, but there will be some that will because they're not going to like the idea, and I get that. So the point is for us, and tonight was a first attempt at doing this, is to establish value. Like, what does it mean as a parent? What does it mean as a person in the community that does not have kids? What does it mean as a business? Is to establish value. So that's, to me, that is the critical piece. So those who are on the fence and concerned, who don't have children, there's some in this audience tonight that are about not to have children, that they're here thinking about this. So what does it mean? The value sell, I think, can be easier if you're in elementary grades, but I still think it's relevant to the community because so goes the success of the school, so goes the success of the community, businesses, home values, etc. So that's the mission. Okay, good question. So our funding is separate from the city's funding. And the questions in that community survey we did put in, I believe it's 3 we put 3 in. Some of you have received it, obviously, and it's specific to some of the things I addressed tonight. We need that. I'd like to see what the community's feelings are. These help me do that. That survey can help a great deal because it can more validate some of the real concerns. But it is important to distinguish between our revenue and the city's revenue. And the city has needs as well. And so one of the things I think is important to make sure that you do is to stay really informed with what the city's priorities are. Because, that's not my role, but I can tell you I'm informed to know that they have needs. And that community survey will say, here's what the city community says we need. And you know what they're going to say? Infrastructure for stormwater, more recreational things. They're going to say all the things that it's this idea of a community with high expectations, more and more and more. And so I would not want anyone in the community to be misled that the city is bankrolling a lot of dollars just to sit there. There are a lot of needs that survey will say. And so my advice is to stay really informed and plugged into what the city's priorities are and know that they've got a set of dollars and we have a set of dollars. We're largely funded through the property tax. They're largely funded through the sales tax. Yeah, Mountain Brook, yeah, I'm gonna miss a little on percentage, buddy, but Mountain Brook's total millage now is 109 point something. Am I about right there, Kimberly? It's about 109. There are 3 systems in the state, 3 school systems that are exempt from a 1976 law called the Lid Bill. And the Lid Bill was passed in those days to cap the property millage in a community at 75 mills. 3 communities were already above the lid cap: Huntsville, Mountain Brook, and Vestavia. So there is not a lid in our communities for that. There is in Homewood, there is in Hoover, other communities, but not in ours. So it allows us to go up in our millage if the community decides to do that. They passed a 10 mil tax 3 years ago, and it was successful. I believe, I'm going to estimate 55, 56%, not bad for a tax campaign. To give you an illustration of what that looks like in 10 mills, a 10 mil tax on a $500,000 home, the easy math is 10 mills on $500,000 home equals $500 per year. Divide that by 12 if you do in your escrow mortgage, and that's what the impact would be. We're not going to be 10 mills, but that's a good illustrative point to make. Mountain Brook did it, passed it. That's easy to think about, but we will not be at 10 mills. Yeah, I thought it was a successful one. And that occurred actually the week after tax valuations occurred that year that took the property values way up, land values. It was a big increase, so they were really nervous about it, but their community supported it. Taxes are difficult conversations because we all recognize the realities. In 1990, our city was in a recession like the rest of the United States. Inflation was about 5.5%, not as high as it is now. You could make the same argument for 1976 and 1970. There were economic troubles during those times. I tell you that to say that the reason we do this strategic investment for value, really is independent of the fact this is a long-term look, and timing is never going to be right with taxes. We think this is an investment that's important. And it goes again to the ability for us to convince the community that this is a valuable thing to do in spite of what the economy looks like. That was a long answer, buddy, but I hope it helped. Other questions? Well, we don't forecast there to be much more than 1% this year. And that, it grows a little bit each year. Well, I can't predict what may come in a legislative session, if there's an additional salary increase, things like that were unpredictable things. But the reality for us is it becomes about decisions of choice and priority. So roofs have to be fixed. Air conditioners have to be working. The less glamorous things have to happen before STEM would ever be thought about, or world languages, or those supports. We've got to have facilities that operate. So priority-wise, that's where we'd have to start, and it really would be choices within this $90 million budget we have of what do we do in order to be able to do these projects with the funds we have. Well, that's probably better, but Jeff Towns probably can explain that better in terms of the economic development there. He and I have had some conversations about that because we're largely dependent sales tax on grocery, restaurants. Their tax base is dependent likely on other things. There may be some industry, hotels, they've got some of those type things going on. So I would just suspect that their sales tax revenue for what they have, their businesses are generating higher levels given that they have 4,200 or 4,300 kids. So. Yeah, yeah. That's not a great answer, but it has to do with what is producing the sales tax. Yes, and we're one of the few systems that is as dependent upon the property tax as we are, but that's a sustainable mechanism. So when there are lean times economically, the property values stay where they are, so we have more of a stable funding mechanism. Many school systems have more of a reliance on the city's sales tax to do that. We do not. That is a good thing for stability. Yeah.
They have half the enrollment we have.
They do. That's right. Yeah, they're about 4,200 or so. Mountain Brook's right around, a little bit less, right around the same. It's a long way. That's a good question. It's a long way. If you go up there, I mean, it's a long walk, and I've asked about questions about rain and the elements and things like that. The reality is, one of the things that we want to get out of this is that of value to people. Like, we can replace our parking with our plan. Is that a value to people? It will be quite expensive to do because the elevation grades are terrible. It will move into that area that's much farther away. So I've had a good number of meetings during the fall. I've not heard people come out of their seats about that. It's just something we wanted to show and to hear. Does that resonate with people? But the reality is, we're still not going to have enough parking. If you want your sophomore to park, not going to happen. So we just don't have it. And we don't want to do decks because that brings a whole different realm of issues with safety and just mere cost to do it. So the bottom line is, we will not have enough parking ever for the needs that we have, but we can replace what we would lose. One of the things that we had mentioned is that we'll put this online, make it available for folks. I think an important thing for me to say to you is, it's not my job to tell you what you ought to do and how you ought to vote. My job is to lay out a case and tell you what we can do as a community, and you have to decide that. That's your decision. But as much as anything, it's important to be properly informed. Be informed about what the school system's plan is. Be informed about what the city's plans are. Watch board meetings or point people in that direction and say, you want to know something about the components of the plan? We do something every board meeting that's about a specific part of this plan. This month is going to be about arts. The following semester, we'll talk about STEM and languages. So we're doing everything we can to make it available to people, to eliminate the misinformation, but there's a lot of accurate information that you can at least point people to, and then they can make an informed decision. Because ultimately, this is a vision that we're giving to the community to say, this is what we think our students are telling us that we need to do. So I'm so appreciative that you came tonight on a Tuesday, on a Monday when you could, what is it? It's a Monday, yeah. On a Monday night when you could do other things, and I appreciate it very much. And that site stays open, so you can keep asking questions that you want to. You can call me. You can call Jennifer, Jacqueline, any of us. They'll be glad to talk to you about any components of this. And if there are places that you say you didn't sell me well enough on, you didn't give me enough value in, I'd really like to hear that as well. So thanks a lot. Appreciate it. We're hanging around here afterwards if you want to come talk individually. So have a good evening.